My name is Lee Bernstein. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska a long time ago, December 21st, 1925. Shortest day of the year. I sometimes blame that for my size, a little guy. Been here a lifetime. My father was born in Omaha in 1893 on 13th and Williams Street. Mother was from Europe. She ended up in Council Bluffs. She was part of the Hoffman family over there. And my father was one of 5 children belonging to Levi Bernstein, who had 2 families. The first family had its roots in Council Bluffs, the Krasnys, the Bernsteins, and the second family was all from Omaha.
Lee, do you remember your father's brothers?
I do. I remember Uncle Paul, my Uncle Paul. That was his daughter was Phyllis Ann, wife Helen, the youngest of 5 children in my dad's family, and the others migrated, 2 sisters and a brother, to California. Ike, Sally, and Rose. And that's my parents' family.
Did you ever know your grandfather?
No. The year that I was born, he passed away. Grandmother I did, but for just a short time. I think I can remember her. Their home was on 19th Street on about Grace. And she was married at that time to a fellow by the name of Shames. I understand she was a tough gal.
How about your mother's side of the family?
I, of course, had 2 mothers. My real mother, the Hoffman family, they were Council Bluffs people, and very loving, wonderful people. Morris was in the furniture business and had Bluff City Furniture over in Council Bluffs. And the others migrated to California. So,
Who were they?
well, the one that probably, the Walpas, part of had an aunt, a Hoffman aunt, Julie Walpa. And they separated after having 2 children, Harold and Jack Walpa. Jack moved to Houston, but Harold, another California import. He made his life out there. Beyond that, people just scattered around the 4 corners of the United States.
Do you know how your mother and dad met?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I know that my stepmother came along. She was, my dad was anxiously, after my real mother passed away, a year after my birth. So that would be in 1926. And my dad was looking for someone to care for his 2 children. And apparently he found this lovely lady who I still claim was my mom. She raised me from the time I was about 3 years old through my life. And her background was from North Dakota. Very few Jews were up in North Dakota. She had lost her father in a blizzard. He had gone out looking for cattle. They were farm people. But she came to Omaha to live with the Levinsky family that were Jewish people that lived out in at that time, northwest Omaha, which was around 45th and Lake. And
What was her maiden name?
Brown. She and my dad made a life. Things were sort of tough back in those years. And my sister, Harriet, was 9 years older than I, so I came along a little late for my family. And my sister Harriet had polio, which was quite common back in those years, before the Salk vaccine, etc. And had a tough life. My dad had been in the grocery business, and 18th and St. Mary's, in that Flatiron building that still exists down there. I think the grocery store might still be there. Nonetheless, it was a little rough go. About in 1930, I would say probably 32 or 33, my father met a fellow, Reuben Epstein, and he and my dad decided to try going into the meatpacking business, and they opened a little packing house on 27th and N Street, and killed a few cattle, sold them locally, and made a life. But it was a struggle.
Tell me about your education, Lee,
Oh,
going
my
back to grade school.
Grade school started at Henry W. Yates. We lived at that time on 36th and Davenport in a duplex. We went to Henry Yates, a lot of Jewish families around there, from Theo Cohn and the Blumkin Group, and a lot of Jewish families were at Henry Yates School. Wasn't long thereafter, when my dad went into the meatpacking business, we tried to move a little bit south. We moved to an old frame home, rented it, 35th and Leavenworth Street. My mother took in roomers, as many Jews, trying to help their income, while my dad was having a tough go getting established in the meatpacking business. And from there at Jackson School on, I think it was about St. Mary's and Leavenworth, where the two streets merged, I spent until the date of my upcoming bar mitzvah in that home. And then finally things got a little better. My dad bought a home on 38th and Pacific Street, right near the field club, where we used to cheat and run up there, either play football or get out on the golf course with found balls and an old golf club. Sort of fun. Nice area to grow up in. What else?
Who were some of your friends growing up? Do you remember?
Well, one was Norman Denenberg. Norman lived on 38th and Leavenworth. The majority, there weren't very many Jewish families that lived in that area. Not that, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, Ben, but most of my friends were not Jewish at that time. And it just sort of broke a barrier that I had really felt in my youth. I'm sure most people my age know what I'm talking about.
How about bar mitzvah? What was it like?
Oh, the bar mitzvah was at the old Bethel on 20th and Dodge Street. Rabbi Goldstein, he made certain that I didn't make too many mistakes, and it was quite a day. Living in a brand new home on 38th and Pacific Street, having family and friends come in on a Sunday, to celebrate it with me. That was my bar mitzvah. Beyond that, studying as much as I possibly could at the old JCC. I think one of my teachers was Baruch Wolfson, and wonderful fellow, wonderful man. And
then where'd you go to high school?
Central High. Went to Central. AZA.
Tell me about those years.
Oh, those years. I tried, I wasn't very tall, like I said before. I graduated from high school, I was barely 5'2" and just awfully small. Anyway, back in those years, we used to play basketball down at the Old J. And I can remember I was a guard, and I'd bring the ball up with whoever else was on the team. I can't remember, but I do remember Today, there is an attorney by the name of Jack North. Cathedral High School had a Cathedral grade school had a basketball team, and they showed up one day to play against us. Jack was the tallest guy that I ever met. He was probably 6 foot tall, and they played a 3-2 zone defense on us. And he was in the middle, 6 foot tall. I'm 4'8", and he's got his arms spread out. And I can remember trying to get the ball inside, and I could never get the ball past him. We got buried that time. Anyway, it was fun. Used to swim, enjoyed the Jewish Community Center immensely. Took my Hebrew lessons down there, and it was a necessity.
What other things were you involved with in high school?
Well, in high school, my sister was quite a vocalist. Harriet sang with the choir, and I thought that was really neat because she appeared in several programs. So I decided I was going to try that. So I got in the a cappella choir and enjoyed that. Debate. Not much else to tell about my high school. I wasn't a very accomplished student and was anxious to graduate so that I could run off and join the Navy, which I did.
Growing up, were you able to work with your dad a little bit?
Well, I did. I used to take the streetcar, and after school, I would take the crosstown streetcar and go all the way out to South Omaha and help him do the books. And at that particular time, if I got out there early enough, I could see them slaughter a few cattle, and it didn't look very pleasant to me. It wasn't a very desirable vocation, so I at that time decided that wasn't for me. But lo and behold, that's what I ultimately spent my lifetime doing.
You say you went into the Navy.
Yeah.
What year was that?
1943. 1943. I graduated from high school and decided to go to Omaha University. Before my 18th birthday arrived, though, I spent a few months at OU, and before my 18th birthday, I joined the Navy, so I wouldn't be drafted into the Army. When the Navy, barely got in, being 5'2". I think that was the minimum height. Got in the Navy, went off to Farragut, Idaho. It was so impressive. It was huge. Mountains, pine trees that were 40, 50 feet in height. It impressed me so much. I promised myself that someday I'm going to come back here and enjoy this place. Took my boot camp, 2 months. 2 months of regulated sleeping, eating, and growing. I got back home, I was 5'6" in those 4 months, and was able to date a couple very lovely, taller Jewish girls. Clarabelle Cohen, I remember her so well from Council Bluff. And that's what happened. Anyway, went back in the service and grew some more. And thrillingly came out of the service in 1946 at 5'8½". That's one of the major accomplishments of my life, growing.
Where did you spend most of your time in the Navy?
I went to school in Seattle, Washington with the Navy called fire controlling. Fire controlling isn't exactly what it sounds like. Fire controlling was the positioning of batteries of guns. Even back in those years, we had computers, and I tried to learn how to run a computer to align large batteries of guns and how to repair these machines. So after my schooling was over, it was about a 4-month school, 1 month staying at Bremerton, Washington, which was the area of departure for us to be reassigned. And they decided to send me and about 5,000 other fellas on one ship, a troop ship, to go up to the Aleutian Islands. And I was sent there with this huge group. Got on that big vessel and got my orders immediately to be a forward 3-inch gun watch, which stuck me up in the very prow of that huge vessel. It was November. Wintertime in the North Pacific is no place to be, especially for a little Jewish fellow from Omaha, Nebraska. That ship was being escorted by a few destroyers. And here we're going through seas that, through this huge boat, 50, 60 feet in the air, and then it would crash down, and I'd get sicker than a dog, and everything came up. And for 14 days, before we got to Adak in the Aleutians, one of the islands, I prayed. I said, Lord, please don't put me back on a ship. And thank God, he answered my prayers and left me at a ship repair base in Adak in the Aleutian Islands. And that's where I spent most of my time up there.
What was the weather like up there?
Wasn't that bad. The weather, Ben, really wasn't that bad. It was very changeable. They call it the home of weather. It could do 4 or 5 different things in a day. But it really wasn't that terrible. The winds were very fierce, and you could walk outside to and from your hut to the chow hall or to your office to work, or to your work, and you could walk at times at a 45-degree angle into the wind. It would keep you upright. But beyond that, a lot of rain, not a lot of snow, but it wasn't really very comfortable. We had a lot of ships coming in to be repaired, and that's where I was fortunate enough to see a couple of old friends that we had grown up together, not really together, but in Omaha. Kiwi Kirschenbaum was an officer on a destroyer, and when he got off, he heard that Lee Bernstein was here, and looked me up, and we were able to get together. Sam Alloway on another destroyer came into base. This was all during wartime, and it was really neat to see these fellows.
How long did you stay there in all?
Well, I was in Adak. I think we spent about 1.5 years at the ship repair base. And then we started lend-leasing vessels to the Russians. And this took place at a base at the end of the Alaskan Peninsula. Right at the tip of that was an old Army base called Cold Bay. And it was at this point where we went, a group of us were assigned to go back there and rehabilitate that base. And ships were brought into that base, and Russians came in on troop transports, and we taught the Russians how to run those ships. And that was a lend-lease program. Supposedly, I think it was lending more than leasing. I don't think we ever got paid back, but after that was over, I was reassigned back to the Naval Air Station in Adak, and I was at the office. Just happened to be caught typing one day, and that was my new job. I was the commander's secretary there. I was secretary. Is that all right, Ben? Am I doing all right?
You're doing great. How about when you came home to be discharged?
When I was discharged, I was fortunate enough, as I say, to be the commander's right-hand man. I really. And he said to me, Lee, he says, where would you like to be discharged at? I said, well, I met so many wonderful Jewish families, and I made so many friends of young people. After all, I was just 18 when I was going to school in Seattle before I went overseas, that I'd like to be discharged in Seattle and go back and visit them before going back to my home in Omaha. And he said, fine, I'll arrange that. So I was discharged in Bremerton, and was able to see a number of friends. And then, of course, instead of going to Omaha, I took a detour and went to Los Angeles, where my sister at that time lived. Went down to visit her and other members of our family before finally coming back. In 1946, I came back to Omaha, and my dad said, Lee, rather, Billy, Nebraska U for you. You're going to school. So I went down to Lincoln and spent a year there. And the following year, my dad got sick. And the meatpacking business had become a little nicer, a little more comfortable. And I went back to the packing house and went to work there to try to help out, because my dad's heart condition caused me to have to go back. And that's where I spent a lifetime that surely wasn't planned on.
What kind of work did you do at the plant?
Well, to begin with, I loved beef. I had grown considerably. Worked on the kill floor, did everything. Had a partner. My dad had the partner. And deliveries, did everything, anything and everything. Except I never did get an opportunity to go out into the stockyards, something that I really would have liked to have done, because the partner was the cattle buyer. Okay. The major packers in 1947 or 8, I can't remember now offhand, they went on strike, and we small packers fulfilled the needs of many different stores in Omaha and around the country to make up for that volume that the major packers, being on strike, their doors were closed for 3 months. And our plant, along with other independent meat packers in South Omaha, were very fortunate to be able to, volume-wise, take advantage of that period as well as profit-wise. And we worked our tails off to go as fast as we could. At the end of that period, my dad's partner decided that because my father, being at home in bed, couldn't come back to work, he didn't like the idea of all these profits going to a partner who was incapacitated, and said to me one day, he said, well, Billy, he says, I think we're going to have to do something here. He says, I have a son, which he did. He had a son that was working at the plant. And he says, I think that maybe your father and me ought to split up. He says, I'll either buy him out or he'll buy me out, a buy or sell deal. He says, I'll figure out what I should pay you, and well, buy you out or you buy me out. So I went home, told my father the terrible news, because I'm sure that it bothered my dad, who would, you know how heart conditions can affect people. And I told him, I says, Pop, I says, I really don't care whether they own the business, but if he tries to steal it, I knew that would affect my father considerably more. And I said, if he tries to steal it, let's buy it. And for whatever we save, I'll learn the business. The only problem was that I was a little bit backward about the help. I was still only 23 years old, and there were probably only half a dozen employees, but I didn't feel comfortable telling them what to do. And as far as business was concerned, I wasn't an experienced person. So he asked, he says, how would you like it if I talked to Uncle Paul Bernstein, who was in the grocery business? And he said to Paul, I said, fine, if he'd want to come in with us, that'd be ideal. So he talked to Paul, and Paul said he was anxious. He'd like that. So we met on a Sunday soon thereafter, and the partner came in, and made a buy-or-sell offer that we thought was really trying to steal the place. So Paul and I ended up in the meatpacking business.
So you and your uncle were in the meat packing business?
We sure were. And we sold mom and papa stores just as my dad did. My dad was on the inside, the partner was out buying the livestock. So we took over the plant and we employed a cattle buyer to buy our livestock for us. And we slaughtered. Believe me, it was a struggle. And the struggle was even worse because I didn't know it, but Uncle Paul, he, during the years that he had 2 grocery stores, he did not allow them to be unionized. And the union apparently kept that in the back of their cups. And when it came time for us, Paul and myself, to sell meat to these people, a lot of them said, what do we owe you? We don't owe you anything. You were backwards about accepting union butchers in your 2 grocery stores. So it was a struggle. And of course, it was a battle for about 3-4 years. Uncle Paul became ill, and I spent about a year myself there. And one of my customers was in the provision business. They had several refrigerated trucks that were traveling the countryside, and I really had built a good rapport with them, and they were buying all their beef from me while they were renting space in another meatpacking plant. So they said to me one day, why in the heck don't we get together, you know? And I thought, geez, that'd be great, you know, merging 2 companies. And that was the beginning of considerable growth. So that's what we did.
How long did you stay with this, Lee?
With those fellows, a lifetime. It wasn't just with them. It was ultimately one of their sons took their place because they both retired. One of them passed away, one of the older men that was the original Omaha Provision Company. He passed away, and his son came into the business and had been with them. He had one of the trucks and was familiar with the business, and we grew. Didn't grow a hell of a lot until a little incident took place. We could no longer slaughter cattle, and the city was the inspection department of our cattle. They had people that did the inspecting to make certain everything was sanitary and that each animal was for eating. There was nothing wrong with any animal that we slaughtered. They finally decided this was something that they did not want to pay for, and they came to all the independent packers that were still city inspected in South Omaha and said, fellas, you're going to have to now comply with federal restrictions if you want to stay in business, because we are no longer going to offer this service. You're going to have government inspection. So this was something we had to do and something we got done. We went federal, and the plant probably was killing about 75 cattle a week. We'd gotten way up to 75 a week, but it was about that time when I had 2 new fellows in with me in the plant, and they took care of the inside, and I was able to go out and learn how to buy cattle. And that's where I spent a lifetime, in the stockyards. At the time that we were directed to become federal, it was quite an accomplishment to go to the bank and get them to finance us. And we got that done. And soon we're killing 1,000 a week. So times changed.
Who were the people that came in with you at that time?
Neither of them were Jewish. One was Sam Ducci, a fellow who had a reputation of being a very humble, kind, nice human being. The other was a Scotch-Irishman out of a little town up in north central Nebraska, Lyle Page. So Page and Ducci and Bernstein. We were quite a threesome, but we got the job done.
Was a far cry from what you had originally, isn't it?
A lot different. A lot different, yeah. Fact is, I really didn't know whether to bite it off. It was quite a chunk because we were going to have to get a lot of help from the bank. And one of the people that when I had my doubts as to whether we really should take this chance, I went to see Leo Waxenberg, who was an old acquaintance, and I considered someone I could talk to. After all, my dad had passed away a year after Paul and I went into the business. In 1948, he passed away. So, and this was in probably up to 1960s. And I went to see Mr. Waxenberg, and I asked him what he thought. And Leo said, "Billy," he says, "you can do it." He says, "All you got to do is work hard, don't be greedy, and you'll get it done." And he was right. We did a job. We did a pretty good job.
And how long were you together in this operation?
I finally walked out of the packing house in 1984. 1984. In 1979, my wife and I were in Arizona. I used to take maybe 3-4 weeks off in the wintertime to get away. I had other fellows buying cattle for me beside myself. And went down to Arizona for a few weeks of recreation and relaxation, and getting away from the cold Nebraska winter. And one day I was watching the Donahue show, and I brought this story with me all my life. It was a day that golf was impossible. It was raining in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I was watching Donahue, and he had as his guests that he interviewed a lady that had gone through a mastectomy and her oncologist. And during the interview, it was really quite interesting to me. But at the end of the interview, Donahue asked the oncologist, he said, "What do you suggest we try to do to put off this terrible cancer?" And like your patient had. And he said, she said, it was a lady oncologist, she says, "Well, at this time we suggest that you try to stay away from eating too much red meat." And here I am in the meatpacking business, and I was certain that 300 million American women were watching this program. And I couldn't wait to get back to Omaha to talk to my partner, who remained. And I said, "John, let's get out. We've got something to sell. As far as I'm concerned, we ought to get the hell out of this thing." And we've done pretty doggone, "Oh, what are you talking about? We're shipping beef to New York, to Chicago, we're taking care of Baker's stores in Omaha." And so I heeded him for about 4 years until everything started disappearing then. Our business really was affected, as many of them were. If you look at the stockyards in South Omaha today and the number of packers that are left, it affected so many of us. I think that was one of the major factors in the meatpacking business at that time. So in 1984, I finally got my partner to buy me out. He couldn't afford to buy the plants. We had 2 of them at that time. We had automated one packing house, and the other we were breaking beef in and shipping locally. But finally he put his nickels together that were left and bought me out. A few years passed, and he finally threw in the sponge. But
Did you still own the buildings?
we finally got a couple of fellows to buy, not meat packers. The one packing house, the one out on Gomez Boulevard that we had put considerable money into it automating that plant, was sold to Lackawanna Hides, and they used it to store hides in. The other plant, the old building on 31st and L, we sold that to Jim's Meats, a company from over in Iowa who did nothing but gutted the building, sold the equipment out of it, raised the structure itself, and sold the corner lot. Not too many people wanted to get into the meatpacking business at that time. So that was a lifetime.
What year was that you got out completely?
1984. I stayed at home for about 2 months, and my wife got so sick and tired of me, Ben, that she says, "Get out of here. You've got to go do something." So what's there to do? An old cup, you know, I really didn't know too much. I decided that, well, you were born in Omaha. Your father was born in Omaha. You ought to really know this city. Why don't you try a little real estating? So I went and took a real estate course. Pretty heavy. You got to do a lot of reading. So I cheated, and I asked the lady that was the instructor, "Would you like to do a little homeschooling?" And there were 2 of us older fellas, and she came out to my home and preached and cajoled us into learning enough so that we both were able to pass the real estate course. And I went to work for Allen Young. And one of the first jobs that I had with Allen Young, other than sitting on telephones, you know, trying to get a little business, the boss at Allen Young said to me, he says, "Hey, we just got a call from a couple fellows that are moving down to Utan, Nebraska. They're opening a feedlot down there, and they're going to want a couple of houses, I'm sure. Why don't you go out and talk to them?" So at that particular time, having 2 brother-in-laws who feed cattle up north, I knew that the cattle feeding business at that particular time wasn't very good. That's why they were able to buy a feedlot out in Utan, Nebraska. So I drove out to Utan, and I walk into this little shanty where they've got a scale. There weren't any cattle in their pens yet. I walk in, here are 2 guys that are looking at each other across a table that they used as a desk, and they looked up, and here comes a guy into this little old farm shack with a tie and a suit on. They looked at me and said, they said, "What the hell is you doing here, you know?" And I walked in there and says, "What do you want?" And I said, I want to find out who in the hell has got this. I don't know what to say here on camera, but who's got the nerve, the guts to go into the livestock feeding business right now? And they burst into laughter. They were my first 2 customers. One of them, they both had money. One of them said to me, he says, "I want to find a house out here in Utan." Well, Utan is only about 15 minutes from Skyline Drive on the top of the hill out there. I says, "You really want to find a house out here, huh?" I said, "I won't sell you a house out here." "What are you talking about?" I said, "If this thing goes under, you're going to have to be able to find a place that you can resell." There aren't very many people that want to buy a house out at Utan, Nebraska. So I said, "Come on, let's go look." So we went up to Skyline, and we found a beautiful home that overlooked the Elkhorn Valley, and that was my first good-sized sale. And the other fellow, he found a condo out at one of the lakes, Riverside Lakes out there, and he bought it. So I was flying pretty good there to begin with, but the thing that impressed me so much about the real estate business was the ability of women. You know, in the stockyards, you don't see too many ladies. Maybe in the offices, we had a couple of gals working, or at the commission men, but commission firms. But these women are fantastic. I think it's an advantage being a woman in the real estate business rather than a man. You know, after all, you got to talk about how decorations are and what colors and all that. What the hell do I know? I knew a heifer from a steer. That's all I knew. But nonetheless, I had fun. I learned to get the hell out a few years later. But really, it was an enjoyable few years that I spent real estating.
What did you do after you got out of real estate?
Well, if I have to tell you, I was still playing golf. Golf is a sort of a love of mine. Belonged down at Sunset Hills, Sunset Valley Golf Course, down on 83rd and Valley. So one of the fellows that played down there was Gary Epstein, Dr. Gary Epstein. I knew that Dr. Epstein, while we played together, being a dentist, had developed some equipment to go into nursing homes. Remember that, Ben? Okay. And one day we're playing together, and he's grumbling. Gary could really grumble, and still grumbles, because we're still very good friends. Gary's grumbling. What's the matter, Gary? The guy that I got to finance this business with me of developing dental equipment and getting dentists to go into the many nursing homes around here. He wants to pull out. He says, I guess the profits aren't fast enough for him, which they probably weren't, because this business was just getting off the ground. So I thought that was such a wonderful thing to be doing for people. After all, he had a portable x-rays that would go right up to bedside. And the equipment was portable drills and this and that, even portable chairs. And he had put it all together, as perhaps you know, Ben. Anyway, I said, I think I can get some guys together and maybe they can help you put this thing over. So I talked to a few friends, and they thought too that they would like to put some money into such a thing, whether they got anything or not out of it. And we did get it off the ground. Fact is, we got it off the ground so good for a while that the University of Nebraska heard about it, and their franchising department heard about it, and they thought that this should be franchised around the country, and it should have been. It should have been. But when it came time for maybe me to go travel, I'm not going to travel. I was too old already. So I told Gary, I said, go get somebody else. At that time, I was maybe doing the books with him and helping out a little bit, going out to homes and making sure that everything was being cared for. But that's all I could do was around Omaha. But the opportunity was there. And if we had had the right people to help us develop it, the university, all they wanted to do was produce or make a franchise opportunity, but they didn't have the people to finish the job. So it sort of went passé. Okay?
Now I want to hear about your athletics other than golf over the years.
Over the years? Well, I always loved to play ball. And one of your Mishpucha, Maury Hanlon. And what was the pitcher we had? Gerber, Eddie Gerber, Ralph Cooper. We had a hell of a good ball team. What was, gosh, the names escape me right now, but we had a great Jewish ball team. And It got better because we had a couple of Irishmen that filtered in, few black fellows that we had John Goodwin, an old barber down on North 24th Street, and a fellow by the name of Jackson. If he wasn't high, he was one hell of a catcher. But we put together some good ball clubs, Ben, back in those years, and
Had a lot of fun doing it too, didn't you?
certainly did. We just I think it's about time that I told you about my better half. It's not a better half, it's better halves. I had two. The first was Madeline Conakey. Maddie was, if you remember the big rock down on Lincoln Boulevard, Maddie's home was right there. And I fell in love with a beautiful little Jewish girl. Too young for me, but we decided to try to make a life. Had two boys, Alan and Stephen, and first thing we did was we rented a little duplex, a side of a duplex on 49th and Farnham Street. And I was already in the meatpacking business at that time. And we had a lot of fun, a good life together, early. Rose Conakey, mother-in-law, one of the few good mother-in-laws that I can claim. And a lovely family. The Kaplan family was really nice. But Maddie and I made a life together, raised two boys, two good ball players. They played ball at Westside, and I was so thrilled with them because I got them off to good starts anyway with athletics. And I have always felt, that part of the breakdown of the barriers between Jew and Gentile is in athletics. And I know it has helped because my friends, I have so many non-Jewish friends. My sons are both the same way. We were together, Maddie and I, for about 20 years. And what happened was that sometimes things happen, you grow apart. And we decided to split up. Our boys were grown by then. One son graduated from the University of Tulsa, went to work for the Union Pacific Railroad. That's a rarity in our religion, to find many Jewish people working for the UP. But he did. He was a traveling auditor, and after a couple years traveling with the Union Pacific, he finally told them that he wanted to be located permanently. They asked him if he would like to settle in Salt Lake, and he loved it up there whenever he was auditing in that area. He says, that's for me, and he's been there ever since. When the Union Pacific Railroad merged with the Missouri Pacific, they wanted him to move to St. Louis, and he turned them down. He said, I'm not leaving up here. But anyway, he decided to stay there. And the girl that he was going with had a brother who was involved in real estate development. They would go out and find apartment houses and have the A's and the B's, where he found investors to buy the apartment house and people with money that needed write-offs. I shouldn't be saying these things out of school, but anyway, they decided to ask Steve to come in with them as a partner and help them do their accounting, etc. And that's what he did. My other son, Alan, worked with me in the stockyards, and he bought cattle. But as the meatpacking business started tailing off, I told Alan that he should find something else and that I would help him. But his brother called just in time to save me. He said, Al, why don't you come up here with me? And now I have two sons in Salt Lake City that are up there in real estate. Maddie and I split up in about 1969 or 1970, and I stayed single for a few years. And then I found a girl with 2 children, Anita Brahm Mitten. She had married a Mitten from the Mitten family in Fremont. And she and her husband had split up. And we decided to, after going together for a couple of years, to make a life for ourselves together. So then I was able to finally claim a boy that was perhaps 4 foot as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old that grew to 6'3" and played basketball at West Side. Yay, finally got a big guy. And a blonde girl, a 6-foot blonde, who I absolutely adored. And she was a scrawny little 12-year-old when we were 11-year-old, when we decided to make our life together. She is married and has a family in Fort Worth, beautiful family. Twin daughters that are going to Texas Christian right now, and a son that's 16 and playing football down there at his high school. The boy is, he's an entrepreneur. He opened up a few Blimpie franchises here in Omaha by himself. Never did. He went to work for the fellows down at All Makes when he graduated from the University of Nebraska. And he saved his bucks and went into business for himself. He wanted to try it. So one Blimpie added to a second Blimpie, added to a third Blimpie, and a pizza joint, and now he's trying to finally get out of them. He sold 3 of them, and 3 of his shops, and he's got 1 left he's trying to get rid of. But so I have 2 with my second, who I anxiously claim as my own, my daughter and son, and my 2 own boys up in Salt Lake. So we have 4, and I've had a wonderful life. One nice thing about this is that Ben has informed me that he's going to make a few copies of this. And not only will I have 1 copy for my bride of these many 30-some years, but also for my 4 children. And because you are going to, each of you, get copies of this, Alan, Steve, Debbie, Michael, I tell you right now, I love you very much. That's it. I love you.